Good Tvach. We're learning as a chus for Shlema for Ilan Chaya Bas Serach. We're on Daf Tzadi Tes Amud Beis, about 14 lines down from the top by the two dots. We said in the Mishnah, Einin, he can touch Kachim, he's not Tameh, but Einin Chaylik Lechel, he doesn't get his Chaylik. That means a Kayin B'derech Klal is entitled, let's say, for a Chatas or an Asham, he's entitled to get the Basar if he's part of that Mishmar. But the Mishnah is saying if he's an Einin, he can't do the Avodah, and he also can't get a Chelik of the food. He can't get a Chelik of the Basar. Our Mishnah is mashma that all he loses is the ability to get a Chelik, but he's not. Because he was an Einin, it doesn't stop him from eating. He's able to eat at night when they divide up the basar for a minute. Fragt Gemara, Einin tayvel v'oichel es pischai l'erev, abel loy v'kachim. We have a brisa. Where is this? Actually, I think it's a Mishnah in Psachim. Mishnah says that an Einin, it could be toivel, like we said in the previous Gemara that he has a chiyuv tefillah before he could eat, which is dakanas chachamim. But once he's toivel, he could eat his Pesach at night, even though he was at Einin the night before. He's able to eat the Pesach. Avaloi bekachim, but he's not allowed to eat kachim. Kachim, if he's a kayin, he's not allowed to eat. He's also to eat kachim. As we're going to see, these are all l'chayra. We'll see whether it comes from. It could be deraisa, it could be derabanan. The pashas einin laila. The pashas is derabanan. That's l'chayra the explanation. So how does our Mishnah say an einin can be eichel, and the Mishnah over there says he can't eat the kachim at night? It's a stira. Rav Yirmiyah b'difti lekasha. Kam b'Pesach, kam b'shar yimos hashana. So this is a little misleading. The kam b'Pesach is saying on Pesach what the second Mishnah. I'm sorry, our Mishnah that says, even though Mishnah made no mention of Pesach, our Mishnah is talking about where it's talking about a carbon, an einin legabi eating the carbon, the kachim after on Pesach, the night of Pesach, and we're going as the Mishnah Gemara is going to explain, on Pesach he's allowed to eat not just the Pesach because that's a deraisa, a chiv karis, and it's going to be daicha the issa for an einin to eat at night, or the derabanan, but all shar kachim are also going to be allowed to eat. And kan b'shar yimos hashan. And the second Mishnah, the Mishnah in Psachim, that says avaloi b'kachim, that's the rest of the year when it's not Pesach. Even though the Mishnah over there says oichel es pischal erev avaloi b'kachim, which is mashma exactly the opposite. What's the explanation? I did achol Pesach, achol nami kachim. In our Mishnah, since he's anyway eating the Pesach, he could also eat other kachim. B'shar yimos hashana the loichazi. But the rest of the year, when he's not eating the Korban Pesach, he's taka aser to eat. When he's an einin, he can't eat at night from the basar of kachim.
Even if he was mezamen.
Well, we're talking about b'shar yimos hashana. We're talking about other kachim.
Right. I'm saying
he's a kayin who's entitled to a chelik. Even if someone else gives him, right? Even if someone else offers
refuting the Havamina.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant mezamin be mezumin for the Pesach. Right, he's also not just to get a chelik, but he's also to eat also. But the Gemara asks, "My avaloi b'kachim?" Doesn't make any sense. The Mishnah seemed to say over there in Psachim, was talking about we said he could eat the Pesach, but not kachim. It's mashma that night he can't eat kachim. So the Gemara avaloi b'kachim shall kol hashana. So each Mishnah is meaning almost the opposite of what it seems to. Our Mishnah makes no mention of Pesach, and we're going to understand that it's talking about Pesach. And the Mishnah over there does mention Pesach. When it says kachim, it's talking about the kachim of the rest of the year. And that's why it's going to be also. So that's the first teretz. Avasi amaloi kasha. Kancha meis meis ba'arba asa v'kavrei ba'arba asa. That which we said that it's aser over there in the Mishnah over there, that's talking about where he was this kayin who wants to eat, or the kayin who wants to eat shar kachim, he had someone die that day. So he's an Einin because let's say his sister died on Erev Pesach. So he's an Einin that night from his Deraisa Dika din of Einin. And that which we said that he could eat shar kachim, that's talking about where he wasn't a full-fledged, a typical einin, where someone had died that day. Talking about where his mace died the day before, on the day before Erev Pesach. And the kfura was on Erev Pesach. So in that sense, he's an einin because the kfura was then. Yom kfura loitafis layloi midrabanan. There's two, so there you're gonna have sort of like a derabanan on a derabanan. First of all, according to this mandam, at this point, we're saying that the Yom Kfura, when the Misa happened the day before, the Yom Kfura is only a din einin derabanan, and also the night is only a derabanan. So we have two things that both it's not the actual day of Kfura, that's derabanan, and it's the night following the Yemei Aninas, the Yemei of Einin. So that's going to be, it's not going to be aser to eat. You have the two factors. You have two factors on the side of eating.
What carbon are we talking about? Carbon Pesach, all kachim? What are we
We're talking about all kachim.
All kachim.
Yeah.
Including the carbon Pesach.
Well, the carbon Pesach is going to be different because the carbon Pesach, as we're going to see, is a deraisa. It's a chiv kar, so that's going to be more reason to be matir. As we're going to see, mantana aninas laila midirabanan. Who's the mandama who says that the aninas, the isser of a oinen eating at night, because he still has a isser oinen of achilas kachim. That's midirabanan Reb Shimon. The Tanya Aninas Laila Midivrei Torah. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda says Aninas Laila is deraisa. Shimon Oima Oinen Ein Midivrei Torah Elam Midivrei Seifim. He says no. The Aninas Laila is not deraisa. It's only a derabban. Teda, and I'll prove it to you. Sher Amru Oinen Toiva Oichelis Pischai LaErev Avaloi Bekachim. So this is a little weird here because this is Tanoim, and they're quoting a different Tana. So this was an earlier Tana that the Rav Shimon held everyone would be maskim to, even though we quoted it earlier from the Mishnah Psachim, but in Rav Shimon you don't usually find that Mishnayos are quoting other Mishnayos. But Rav Shimon says, I'll prove to you that Aninas Laila is only the Rabbanon because we say an Einin can be toivel and he could eat his Pesach at night, but not kosher. Now, why could he eat the Pesach? If it's not so simple to understand exactly why, but we understand that if the isser of a einin to eat was da'iraisa, then even though Pesach is a chiv kares, it would not be mevatel. It must be that the isser achilas einin is only derabanan, and that's why Pesach is mevatel. If there's a chiv of carbon Pesach, if he has to eat his carbon Pesach, that will be mevatel. So that's Rav Shimon's raya that the isser of a einin to eat is only at night is only derabanan from the fact that a Pesach can be brought. Tomorrow. Now we're going to have a stira, right? So we've come to the conclusion. Rav Shimon holds that Aninas Laila is only derabanan, and therefore the Pesach he can eat, or like we said before, if it's b'shloisha aser, he could even eat other things. If the misa was shloisha aser, if you have both, that day's aninas was only midrabanan. It was an aninas of kfura, and it was at night, which is a second level of derabanan. So then you could even eat kachim. Correct the Gemara of Tzavra of Shimon aninas laila midrabanan. Is this true that he holds that aninas laila is derabanan? V'atani Shimon Omer Oinen ein mishalech kabanoisav. An oinen cannot send any his karbanos even though because he's not going to be able to eat them at night. So therefore, he can't send them to be nikrav. he has to wait till after he can bring. He can eat it. My love afilu b'Pesach. L'chayr, this would be mashma. Even a Pesach he can't bring, but if we hold aninas lailas derabanan, then the Pesach should be daicha. Then the Pesach can only be done that day. You're going to be mevatel the chi of karas, the mitzvah with the karas on it of Pesach. It should be mevatel a derabanan. So loy levarmi Pesach. It never meant over there Pesach. It meant the other karbanos he can't send. The Pesach in an army, since aninas lailas derabanan, he could bring. Now,
Who's sending? Regular Yisrael sending?
I'm sorry.
Who's
We're talking about
sending? Yisrael?
a Yisrael who's an Oinen.
Okay.
When it comes to a Pesach, there's no difference between a Kayin and a Yisrael. Everyone has to bring the Pesach. When we talk about, when we talk about the entitlement to eat basar, I think I'm not sure. We don't really talk about a Yisrael being able to eat if he's an Oinen. I don't think he could bring a carbon altogether at that point, but it's isn't that I think there'll be some technical problems with the Yisrael bringing his shlom. He can't even go into the Beis Hamikdash. It's not going to work. But a Kayin has an entitlement to the basar, so at night he could go in and eat it, even if he's an oinen, if he was part of the Mishma.
But this is not talking about Pesach. This is talking about sending a korban like Chatas or Oshim.
Well, we're talking about. The
Havamina
was saying even when it says at first we thought it included a Pesach also. It could be any carbon. So we say no, but then it would be shver because if it was talking about a Pesach, it should. If you hold aninas laila is only the rabbanan, you should be able to bring a Pesach because a Pesach is the raisa with the chi of karas. So the Gemara answers he never meant to talk about the Pesach. He's only talking about other karbanis. A regular kayan who became an einin, and he's saying on that he can't, or a regular yid who wants to send a carbon. It means he can't bring any carbon. Yeah, so he's not allowed to bring a carbon. If he has a chatas to bring, he can't. Or a chatas not going to be negayat him, but let's say we're talking about we're leaving aside the achila part of it. He's not allowed to bring a carbon during the day. If he has a chatas to bring, if he wants to bring a shlamim, even though his aninus is going to be over that night, he's not allowed to bring a carbon. Midrabanan. Correct the Gemara. But Tanya, how could it be that Rav Shimon holds that aninus laila is only the rabbanan? But Tanya Rav Shimon oimer shlamim kishu shalom maybe ve'enim maybe kishu einin. Shlamim can only be brought when a person is a shalom, but he can't bring it when he's an einin. Minayin the rabbis says hatoida. How do we know also to include toida that it also can't be brought? Ma'abin is hatoida shchen necheles besimcha kishlamim. That toida is also brought. Shlamim you bring as to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom, and the toida is similar in that regard that a toida is also brought to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom. Right? You bring shlamim usually on carbon on Yom Tif. You bring you come and you bring the shalmei chagiga. You bring a chagiga, which is a kind of shlamim. Minayin l'rabbis oila. How do I know to include oila also that it can't be brought as ein? And ma'arbani is oila shechem ba that it could be brought as a neder or nadava k'shlamim. So in that way, it's similar to a shlamim. Just like a shlam can't be brought when he's ein, so too like all the taida and the oila. Minayin l'rabbis. Bechar or Maisur Pesach. How do I know to include also Bechar Maisur Pesach? Ma'avani Bechar Maisur Pesach. Shechenem boyin al chet. They're similar to a shlamim that they don't come for a chet. They're brought for other reasons, for good reasons. Now this is obviously a problem. This is really we're going to continue with this brisa, but we already hit the problem. Before we said that according to Reb Shimon, Aninas Laila is midrabanan, and he brought a raya from the fact that you could bring the Pesach because the Pesach has a chiv kara, so therefore it overcomes the aninas laila derabban. But now he's saying a pasuk that says you cannot bring a Pesach when you're an einin. But let's continue with the brayso. So that's going to be the shaila. They have one pasuk telling you that an einin can eat the carbon Pesach, and another brayso is saying that you can't bring the carbon Pesach. That it's a pasuk tells you can't. But now let's continue. Minayin l'rabba is chatas v'asham tamaloima, which they're not, but they are Baal Chet, so you can't say the same thing. Tamaloim is that. That we need a pasuk already. The other things are all similar enough to Shlomim, we can make a mematzinu. But once you get to Chatzas and Asham, we have to learn out. The pasuk, the Torah says Zevach. So that comes to include Chatzas Asham. How do we know that you can't bring any of these things when he's an Einan? Tamaloim is Shlomim. Shlomim Karboni. Kol Karbonis, Shu Mevi Kshu Shalim Mevi, Ve'ena Mevi Kshu Einan. We learn out from the Torah says, Shlomim Karbonai, that they all have to be Shalom. All the Karbanas have to be Shalom. Whatever he brings has to be Shalom. He can't be an Einan. But now the Gemara goes back to its question, Katani Mia Pesach. In this whole long list, we said the Pesach is excluded. It cannot be brought by an Einan. And we had said, according to Rav Shimon, Aninas Laila is in the Arbana, and therefore, I'll be your raya from the Mishnah, or the earlier Mishnah, that says that you can bring a Pesach on even when he's an Einin, because it's and our assumption was because it's a daraisa, it has a chiv kares. Amar Chizda Pesach Kadinasp. So we're sort of like we went off on a track here, right? We got into this discussion about Reb Shimon because of the second Rav Asi's mahalach of how he was answering that our Mishnah says Ein chaylik lechol. We said, but he can't get a chalukah, but he could eat. So we wanted to answer that it depends. It's because our Mishnah is talking about where he could eat because he was really just the kfura was on Erev Pesach, but the misa was on the 13th. Because then we're going to Rav Shimon, who says that Aninas Laila is only the Rabban. But now we're going into this sub-discussion over here. Okay, so we brought a raya that Rav Shimon holds Aninas Laila is the Rabban, and from that which he says it straight out. Aninas Laila Medivrei Torah, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Shimon Ein El Medivrei Torah, Medivrei Sefer, and he brings a raya that you can bring a Pesach. Then he says that a Pesach you can't bring. So now we're going to have the Gemara is going to give a lot of different terutzim of this sub question of why does Reb Shimon contradict himself? In one place he says Aninas Laila is derabban, and therefore Pesach is brought, and in another place he says the Pesach is not brought. He just has a straight out stira. Amar Rav Chizda Pesach Kadinasba. Rav Chizda says that this brisa that we just quoted, where he said that Pesach and Meiser and Bechor are all excluded, that they Einan can't bring them. Pesach was just thrown in because it always goes together with Bechor, Meiser, and Pesach. So the brisa just used the normal formulation, but Ein Chanami Pesach has a special exclusion because Aninas Laila is not. Since it has a chiv kares, it will overcome even the yes. Rav Sheshes Amar, that's Rav Chizda teretz. Rav Sheshes Amar, my Pesach, when it refers to the Pesach, it's not talking about taka the carbon Pesach. The carbon Pesach, believing aside, we can even accept the idea that even if Aninas Laila is da'iraisa, which, right, this bryce, well, all these things are not talking about Aninas Laila. We're talking about whether you could bring these karbanas. So we're saying you can't bring the karbanas. Now, the Pesach, it happens to be, in order to bring it, you have to be able to eat it at night. So we're saying that at night, you're going to be able to, we're saying that Ein Chanami, you could eat the Pesach at night, but this Mishnah brought in that you can't bring the Pesach, even though it's not really correct, because you're going to be able to eat it at night, so you could bring it. And the Chiv Kares will overcome the din, the pasuk that says that you can't bring by day. My Pesach Shalmei Pesach. It's not talking about the Pesach itself. It's talking about the shlomim that they would bring along with the Pesach, and to make sure that there'd be enough meat for everyone who was eating, even if the Pesach itself ran out, they would have other foods to eat, right? Because the Pesach had to be all finished that night. So it was very hard, you have a whole cow, you need like 20 people to eat it. But you're worried about what happens if the Olam is not satisfied. You had so many people, because everything has to be finished. What if everyone's finished and they're hungry? So they would bring additional shlamim along with it. So it's talking about those Shalmei Pesach. So Shlam, that's a regular shlam where we learned the original dim from, that Einan can't bring a shlam. So Pesach with no shlam habayim machmas atzim. I would think you would say it goes along with the Pesach, since the Pesach, the Chamul Geyser, since the Pesach is supposed to be brought when he's an Einin, because of the Chiv Karas, it will overcome the Derabanan of not bringing Balayla. So too, a person should also bring the Shalmei Pesach, one might think. So that's why we say that the Pesach, when it says Pesach, that you don't bring a Pesach by Aninas, it means the Shalmei Pesach, it's treated like any Shlam. Rav Meri Amar, so then Rav Meri gives a third teretz to this Stira and Rav Shimon. That in one hand he seems to say that a Pesach is brought by Aninas, and in one place he says it's not. The Mishnah says he does bring it, but not as Bishlamim not, and in the Brisa he included in the long list of things that you don't bring banyas. So come on, loy kasha. Kansha meis loy meis biyadal v'kibri biyadal. Kansha meis loy meis biyad gimel v'kibri biyadal. He's essentially stealing the teretz that we had said for the stira between our Mishnah and from the Mishnah and the Mishnah in Psachim, and he's using it to explain Rav Shimon. So since he's gonna be saying like this, Rashi explains he's gonna have to answer the earlier question, was Rav Yirmiyah Bedifti's teretz that he had originally said that one is talking about what was he say? Kam b'Pesach, kam b'Shar Yimais Hashana. He's not going to say the teretz like we said that it's all talking about other things, the Yud Gimel and Yudalid, and it's all talking about Pesach. So he's going to answer, when did Rav Shimon say that you do bring the Karban Pesach? That's when the person was died on the 13th, and the Kvura was on the 14th. So Kansha Meis Lemeis B'Yadav V'Kiv the Brisa, the long Brisa that included Pesach from the things that he can't bring, that's when the person died on the 14th. Kansha Meis Lemeis B'Yagim V'Kiv Yadal. Meis Lemeis B'Yadav V'Kiv Yadal Yoy Misa Taifas Laila Midaraisa. If he died that day, he's going to hold that Midaraisa he can't bring. Meis Lemeis B'Yagim V'Kiv Yadal Yoy Kavur Midaraban. Ain't a Taifas Laila Ela Midaraban. Frakti Gemara, Amalei Ravashi Lermeri. Ravashi asked a very obvious question. Where did we get this from? That Rav Shimon says you could bring a Pesach ba'aninos. How could you say bring a raya from the fact that an einin could be toivel and eat his Pesach, but not by kachim? And we brought that. That was the raya. That was Rav Shimon's raya that Aninas Laila is midrabanan, right? Mantana Nislai Derabanan she did Tanya. Aninas Laila midivrei Torah, divrei Yehuda. Rav Shimon Ayin and divrei Torah. So frak the Gemara. Hagiv Avalei Kashem name alei. Rabbi Yehuda should answer back. Kamina Chana Yoy Misa Derais Ramaliat Es Yom Kur Derabanan. How could you bring me a raya that Aninas Laila is the Rabbanan? I'm telling you that Aninas Laila of a day that's Dairaisa, the Yom Misa is Dairaisa, and you're answering back, no, this is only the Rabbanan because it's talking about the Yom Kfura, which itself is the Rabbanan, so the night is also the Rabbanan. Of course the night is the Rabbanan if the day is the Rabbanan. So what kind of raya is that? The Gemara Kasha, it's not a good question. I mean, I see on the side that they say that they bring from the Svas Emes to Rutzim on this kasha because it says kasha, it doesn't say tiyufta. It seems like such a strong question. You wonder how you could have said this in the first place without a teretz. Abaya gives another teretz. He goes back to the original question, the Stira and Rav Shimon, that in one place in the Brisa, Rav Shimon says that you can bring a Pesach ba'aninos, and then he lists that you can't bring he listed the Pesach together with Bechor and Meiser as something that an einin can't bring. Abayam alekasha, kancha meis koidem chatzos, kancha meis la'ach chatzos. It depends on when the zman of bringing the Karban Pesach starts in chatzos. So it's going to depend. If the Misa happened before chatzos, so right, he was already in Einan when the time of bringing the carbon happened. So then, even though there's a chi of karas to bring the carbon, even though it was happened that day, it's not going to override the pre-existing aninus to bring the carbon. But if the Misa happened after chatzos, so he was already mechoyev to bring the carbon. So you can't undo his chiv to bring a carbon, even though there's an isser midaraisa that an einin can't bring a carbon, and therefore would even override the Pesach. But if you already had the chiv to bring the carbon, then he became an einin, that's not going to undo his chiv. A contrary is If the mace died before he already was chazi to bring the Pesach, so the aninus was chal on him, and therefore the chiyuv to bring the Pesach was not chal. The aninus cannot be chal, we already has a chiyuv Pesach. Now this is it's an interesting svara. Sagt the Gemara, but it needs a little bit of a bolster. You're coming up out of whole cloth with this svara that it's a nafkamina of which came first, which is going to apply. So one is going to bring a raya that there must be such a thing. We know tamer the shani leben kaidon chatzos ben lachatzos. Where do we say that it makes a difference whether the aninas came before chatzos or after chatzos? The Tanya lo yitama. The pasuk says about a. This is talking about what is it? We're going to see it's a machlekes whether he should or he can be metama to a karev. The kohen is metama to a karev who died. The close karev. Mitzvah. And he's a mitzvah, he's mechuyev to do so. And if he doesn't want to, then metama him whether he wants to or not. The story of Yosef, who was a kohen, and his wife died an erev Pesach, and it doesn't really make a difference that he was a kohen, because everyone's mechuyev to bring a Pesach. But he didn't want to become metama on erev Pesach because he wanted to bring his carbon Pesach. They all got together, the other kohenim, they took him and they took him in handcuffs and they forced him to be metama to his wife. They say there's a chiyuv shalom bayis. Your wife will come get you even from the grave if you don't show up. So there's no fooling around. So you see that you are metama. And this is talking about Pesach. That you are metama for a carbon Pesach, even though he's going to lose the carbon Pesach. So, Brahmini, how could you say this? This is talking about the Gabi and Nazir. The Nazir it says not with the hey, but with the aleph, that he shouldn't be metama. Nazir does not have the din to be metama to a karev. And what it lists all the different people. First it says to any karev, then it says to each one. I'm going to have the brayso at the end of the Amud, which will go through each one what it teaches you. But the last thing it says, I might think that someone who's going to shecht his Pesach or to be mal his son in order that a person who has a chi of mila on his son is not able to bring the Pesach. So it's also another version. He has to do these things. He has to do these things in order to bring his Pesach. And he heard that a mace died. Yachol yitama. I might think he should be metama. Amrit lo yitama. So we say he shouldn't be metama. This is not talking about bedafka a nazir. It's saying anyone who is in this quandary, we say he shouldn't be metama and loses an opportunity to bring the carbon Pesach. Just like he can't be metama l'chayse because then he won't be able to bring the carbon Pesach. Maybe also he's not metama to a meis mitzvah. But so we're coming to exclude that a mace mitzvah is not included. But what we see from this is that someone who so from the first brisa, therefore, so for the first brisa, they say that the mitzvah of being kaiver a karev is not doicha Pesach, but
we forced them to.
no, I'm saying, but he could not bring the Pesach in either case. Yosef HaKayin, the reason why they forced him because he's anyway an Einin, and Einin is not able to bring the carbon Pesach. So therefore, there's no reason why. That's why they forced him to be Mekayim the mitzvah of burying his wife. He had no reason to not to do so. But in the second case, we say that a person
you should not
even though he was what do you call it? Someone's going to we say he can't be matam himself. For the Gemara, why not? He's not going to lose out on bringing the Pesach. He's anyway an Einin. So what is the point of telling him he shouldn't be matama? So the one we said that the second brisa that says that we were not matama him because he could in spite of the fact he's an Einin. He's not matama. The aninus doesn't stop him. It must be because he became an Einin before Chatzos. And Rabbi Yosef HaKayin was talking about where he became. I'm sorry, it was before. It was after Chatzos. So he still preserved his ability to bring the carbon Pesach. And Yosef HaKayin was talking about Koydem Chatzos. So it all wasn't relevant for him to bring the carbon Pesach. So therefore, they forced him to be matama. He wasn't losing anything. Dr. Mar. So that's our raya that there's enough community between before Chatzos and after Chatzos. I could tell you both of them are talking about Ach Chatzos. So there really would have been a chiyuv, but we're not chaylik between before Chatzos and after Chatzos. V'hara b'yishma, v'hara b'yakiva. But what it's going to be negeya, what it's going to be dependent on is whether you hold like Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. They argue about whether there's a mitzvah to be metama. The Tanya, lo yitama rishus, divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says lo yitama doesn't mean that you have to be metama. It means that if you want to, you have the option to be metama. Rabbi Akiva ama chayva. And Rabbi Akiva says it's a chayva. So there, I could say that this second brisa, that means the story of Rabbi Yossi is Rabbi Yosef Kayin was going according to Rabbi Akiva, who holds that it's a mitzvah to be matami yourself. So everyone, both a Kayin and a Kayin, everyone is mechuyev to be matama themselves in order to do the kfura. So an Einin is taka also to bring a carbon, but there's no. I'm sorry. Both hold that there's no problem with the Einin bringing a carbon, but the question is there a mitzvah for him to be matam himself? So therefore, they forced Yosef HaKayin to be matam himself because he has to follow that mitzvah. What will happen later then he'll become even though he was mechuyev to bring the Pesach, and now by being matam himself, he's going to lose the opportunity. But he has a mitzvah to be matam himself, so he can't abstain from mekayim the mitzvah of being matam himself to a karv. And the second brisa that says that he can't be matama, that was going according to Rabbi Shmuel, who holds it's just a It's just a rishus. So there's no mitzvah. So let him not do the mitzvah and not be metama and be mekayim the. He's not. I'm saying not do the mitzvah. He's not gonna not take this opportunity to be metama himself and preserve his ability, because aninus is not going to stop him from bringing the carbon pesach, and he'll be able to bring the carbon pesach. He can't say that. The Reisha Dahi Rabbi Akiva Katanila. We're trying to say that this second brisa is going according to Rabbi Shmuel, who holds the Rishus, but the brisa itself says it's Rabbi Akiva. The beginning of that brisa clearly says it's Rabbi Akiva, the Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Aimer. Now we're going to say the whole brisa. Nefesh, Elu Akroivim, Meis, Elu Archaikim. A person who is a nazir can't be metam himself, but certainly not to a rachik and not even to a curve. So then it starts listing them. La'aviv ain't metama, but he can't be metama to aviv. Metama l'meis mitzvah, but he could be metama to a meis mitzvah. Le'imai, then what does le'imai add to that? I mean, the first thing is to tell you a meis mitzvah. Now we already said meis mitzvah. We're going to have increasing levels of reasons why he shouldn't be metama to a meis mitzvah, and even so, he still is metama. So Le'imai tells you how you kayin v'hu nazir. If he's not just a nazir, but he's also a kayin. Le'imai hu de'ein metama. He can't be metama to imai yav metama l'meis mitzvah, but he could still be metama l'meis mitzvah. La'achiv. Then the Torah says la'achiv shem haya kayin gadol v'hu nazir. It's not just a regular kayin, but he's a kayin gadol, and he's a nazir. La'achiv and metama l'meis mitzvah. Even a kayin gadol is who's a nazir is metama l'meis mitzvah. La'choisem al tamalaymer. Harisha halach lishchad is pischa v'lamulis b'noi. We're adding on top of everything else. It's not just that he's a nazir, but he also has a mitzvah in front of him that he's going to lose by becoming tamei. V'shama shemeis lemeis yachol yitamer amrit lo yitama yachol shem shem metama lachoyse kachem metama lemeis mitzvah tamalem lachoyse v'lo yitama v'tamu lemeis mitzvah. That comes to tell you that even if he was halach lishchad lachoyse is telling you that this chiddush that a nazir, even if he has a chiyuv to bring the korban pesach, he's not metama. But this was all Rabbi Akiva. This brisa was Rabbi Akiva, so we can't ascribe it to Rabbi Shmuel. So l'chayra, this is not. To me, it seems, yeah. So we're good. So we can't say that it's because of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. So left, the only way to explain it is l'kaydem chatzais and acha chatzais. So it's bleibs a raya to the right. We wanted to bring a raya that how do we answer the steerus in Reb Shimon? We want to say kaidem chatzais and achatzais. So we brought that this also can only be explained with kaidem chatzais and achatzais. We try to say maybe it's Reb Shimon or Reb Akiva, but we blew that up. So now we're back to saying kaidem chatzais and achatzais. You have to always keep in mind whether we're asking a kasha or giving a teretz. Rava Amar, Rava says another teretz of the steer in Reb Shimon, where Reb Shimon in one place says that Pesach can be brought because Aninas Laila is midrabanan, and then we say he brings a pasuk that says Bechor and Meiser and Pesach cannot be brought by Aninas. It's all achachatzais. That's not the chiluk. Like kash kan koydev sheshachtu v'zarkolov kan la'achta sheshachtu v'zarkolov. That which we say he can bring, he can bring it as a einin. That means if he became einin after he was already shechted and zark, so then he could he already brought it, so then he could eat it. But before the shechita and zrika, he's not allowed. Amalei Ravadra Masal Rava Ach sheshachtu v'zarku es damai ma'ada hava hava. What are you saying? He already was yaitza. So why there's a mitzvah to eat the Pesach? Why would we allow him to eat? I'm sorry. Why would we allow him to eat the Pesach? He already was yaitza as mitzvah korban Pesach. The reason why we have to allow him to eat it because you can't bring the korban Pesach unless you're able to eat it. But once the korban Pesach was already brought, he was already yaitza. He was brought it as someone who could eat it at that time. So now he lost his ability to eat. That's not going to take away the mitzvah from him retroactively. So why would we allow him to eat it? Amalei Ravina Achil Tzacham Akva Medarava Baravhuna. The Ravina answered him To Rav Ada bar Masna, no, you're incorrect, because we're going according to the Mandamar, who holds that if you don't eat the Korban Pesach, you're not Yotzi a mitzvah. So even though he brought it, he was allowed to eat it. If he's not going to be allowed to eat it later, he's not going to be able to Yotzi the mitzvah. Amalei Tzayis might come Rabcha. Rava said, listen, Rav Ada bar Masna, listen to Ravina. He's telling you good. Okay, we'll leave Rav bar Huna, where he explains where that this din comes from, that the Achilas Korban Pesach is ma'akav for tomorrow.